The original Kung Fu Panda, I actually saw in theaters when it came out when I was a kid. Remember my dad took us to see it? My uncle saw it with us, which means that it was probably around like Thanksgiving. It's probably like November or something that when it came out. Anyway, that I always remembered liking the movie, and it was actually like my dad is usually not really one for like enjoying, I guess, a kids movie or a family / kids kind of movie. But I remember I remember him enjoying it because he's a fan of like old martial arts movies and stuff like that. And I always remember liking it, and rewatching it was interesting because I still think it's a really good movie, which is kind of funny because it sounds like it's going to be just total junk. It just sounds like stupid garbage. Like, there's a new movie coming out. It's called Kung Fu Panda, and it's about a panda who does kung fu, and he's voiced by Jack Black, and it has this all this celebrity stunt casting, and you look at it and you go, oh god, okay, whatever. And then you watch it, and it's actually a really good movie that has some like actual interesting characters. It's got some actual like real work put into the themes, having kind of meaningful feeling themes, nice character arcs, and it's just kind of like a satisfying movie. It's got some slapstick and stuff for the kids and all that. And Jack Black is great. It's a perfect kind of Jack Black sort of role, you know? Skadoosh. Like, that's such a, like, he would just say that, you know? He might have ad-libbed that. I don't know, for all I know. Right? But if you've never seen Kung Fu Panda, it's, has anyone not seen that movie? You should. I don't know, once in a while, especially if you have kids. Kung Fu Panda is about a panda named Po, who is the very obviously adopted son of a duck who they work at a noodle shop. And they own a noodle shop, and there's like these 5 master martial artists named the Furious Five who live in, it takes place in the Valley of Peace, which is this sort of like fantasy animal, like anthropomorphic animal, ancient China kind of setting. And they're gonna crown the legendary warrior, the Dragon Warrior, who's going to be like the leader martial artist of the Valley of Peace. And then Po is like a huge nerd for martial arts and kung fu, so he ends up accidentally, he's trying to get to the big tournament where the Dragon Warrior is going to be crowned, and then he, through a series of slapstick mishaps, ends up riding like a firework up into the sky and dropping down right at the right when it's about to be named, right in the center of the stage. And the wise old Master Turtle, Master Oogway, names him the Dragon Warrior, like on a lark. And the Red Panda, Master Shifu, who's kind of like Oogway's student, is like, what the fuck are you doing? And Oogway's like, maybe it would be funny. Ooh, maybe it would be a very funny prank to make Big Panda the Dragon Warrior. And so the story is basically Po having to take on this new kind of, this unexpected responsibility and journey of becoming the Dragon Warrior. Shifu doesn't believe in him, but Oogway has all this old-timey kind of wisdom and stuff. The Furious Five are there. They don't do a lot. They don't do a lot in... they only really do stuff in the second movie. But they're, like, serviceable. There's a nice dynamic between Po and Tigress, who is kind of like the golden... She's kind of like the golden child, almost like Wonderkind of the Furious Five, where it's very clear that she was sort of being built up by Shifu to become the Dragon Warrior, and she's like kind of the prodigious student. Weird that those names are very similar, but they mean totally different things. Not prodigal student. That would be Tai Lung. Oh yeah, and then Tai Lung. There's a nice kind of like interesting 3-way comparison between Po, Tigress, and Tai Lung. Because Tai Lung was Shifu's adopted son, who was kind of, he had this lust for power, and Oogway saw that in him, and so he told Shifu that to not make him the Dragon Warrior, that he wasn't going to be the Dragon Warrior. And Tai Lung becomes vengeful and rage-filled and he goes on this rampage and has to be put down essentially by Oogway and imprisoned in this giant multi-storied underground prison. And so naturally he escapes and he comes back. So there's this kind of like, you sort of see, like, it's funny because Shifu was wrong twice about who the Dragon Warrior should be. He was wrong about Tai Lung, he's wrong 3 times. He's wrong about Tai Lung, he's wrong about Tigers, and he's wrong about Po because he doesn't believe in him. And Po is kind of going through this struggle of, like, not really understanding why he's even there, or if this is right for him. And then ultimately, what I really liked about the movie was that it has these really solid, I don't know, it's got this really nice little character theme where the Dragon Warrior can read this, like, they're the only one who's permitted to read this ancient scroll of wisdom, the secret of being the Dragon Warrior. And finally, as Tai Lung is approaching, Po opens up the scroll, and it's this, like, golden cloth or parchment, and he opens it up, and they're like, oh my god, what is, and he's looking at it, and there's like this moment of anticipation, and he's like, it says nothing, there's nothing on it, it's blank. And Chief was like, what? And then he like grabs it, he's not supposed to read it, but he grabs it, and he's like, what the fuck, there was nothing on it? And then Po takes it back, and he's looking at it, and there's a great shot where he's looking at the scroll, and it's so shiny that it's like reflective, and he can see his reflection, and it's like this perfect visual metaphor for what is the secret to being the Dragon Warrior. It's just you. And then he goes, there's kind of this like Shifu's gonna stay behind and hold off Tai Lung while everyone escapes. And as they're fleeing, Po is feeling really down in the dumps because he doesn't get the lesson yet. He doesn't understand. And then his dad stops him, but he tells him about what the secret ingredient to their noodles like soup is. And he says, oh, it's just nothing. It's people just believe, it's basically a placebo. They just believe that it there's something special about it. And when I make it, and that makes it taste better to them. And there's kind of this great like little dovetailing of the two different parts of Po's world, because he doesn't want to work in noodles. He wants to be a kung fu practitioner of some kind. And this thing that he rejected, like his origin of being like a noodle shop worker, ends up being like, wait, it gives him the revelation to understand what the message was, which was, wait, the ingredient is just, it's nothing. It's just believing. There's nothing special. There didn't have to be anything special about me that made me the Dragon Warrior. I just have to believe that I can be. Which is like a contrast to Tai Lung, who feels entitled to it. He believes that he alone should be it. He holds it in this like really high regard, whereas at some point Po almost sees it as like a burden. And then that gives Po the ability and the confidence to go back and face Tai Lung. And speaking about that character, Tai Lung is a really solid villain. He's not in the movie for very long, but he has this very serious presence when he is. He like that whole, I love the scene of him escaping the prison, and it really, like in that one sequence, tells you all you have to know about how strong and how dangerous he is. Like all these little moves and stuff that he does to outsmart everybody and surprise them, and he's just like, he just keeps going, you know? And it's like a really cool sequence. And then to kind of further, Tai Lung is mainly like two real scenes. He's got the prison escape scene, and then he has the bit when he confronts Shifu again. And I really like that. There's a lot of really good scenes in this movie, because he's coming back and he thinks he should be the dragon warrior, but kind of underneath that, there's this intense resentment for towards Shifu. For like, he had this thing, like he has this line like you filled my head with dreams of being the dragon warrior, and then you struck them all down. And he's like, it's like, oh shit, okay, like it's like the one line. It all you even need. I think it goes a little further than that, right? They have this whole conflict and stuff, but all just from that line, it's so great, because it's like I totally get what, and knowing the backstory, because you get the backstory much earlier, you totally get what his motivation is, and he's obviously wrong and he's a villain, but he makes sense. I don't know. He has like an internal logic and feelings that are understandable to the audience. Am I just explaining basic, like, you know, good writing stuff, I guess? But I don't know. Like, he just is. I think it's impressive here because there is not that much time devoted to, you don't get like 10 scenes explaining Tai Lung's character and all these little intricacies of him. You get his backstory, you get the prison escape scene to show that he's like a real deal. There's also the scene where he fights the Furious Five on the bridge. So there's like actually a couple action scenes with him to denote his like to demonstrate his power. And then there's really, in terms of like character scenes, it's like his backstory and then the fight with Shifu. And it's like, damn, I was really actually invested in that conflict. I found that really interesting, between basically father and son, as Tai Lung was his adopted father. And Po was Ping's adopted. Did I say daughter? Adopted son. Why did I say daughter? They're both adopted sons. Yeah, actually, that is interesting. Tai Lung and Po are both adopted sons. And Tai Lung is kind of brought up to, he's raised, kind of groomed for this position of dragon warrior that he feels entitled to, whereas Po is kind of raised to be basically inherit the noodle shop business, which he doesn't really want, which he doesn't want to do. I don't know if that's like, you could go anywhere with that, but I don't know, just a random observation, I guess. I think my favorite scene from the movie is actually the scene where Shifu and Oogway are talking. And it's the scene where Oogway passes on to the spirit realm. But the whole thing leading up to that, it's a really good scene. Like, it's actual good dialogue between the two characters. I really enjoy the conversations they have. Oogway isn't just like a knowledge, like a wisdom dispenser. I feel like sometimes characters like that can be boiled down to just, you know, yeah, wisdom dispensers where they're like fortune cookies basically. But there's a lot of care by the writers put in to make Oogway actually have relevant life lessons. And I like the idea that Master Shifu he's a master, but he obviously still has things to learn, and he can be wrong, and he can make mistakes. And Oogway always knows, like, he always knows. He's a great kind of like that, like, super mentor character where he always knows what the right thing is, but he's not going to tell you flat out. He's going to let you get there on your own and kind of go through the struggle, because when you do, you can, like, he probably knows all this shit. He probably knows that, like, the secret on the scroll and all that. And he knows what the theme of the movie is and the message is, but he's not going to tell you, because the only way it's going to get drilled into you is if you go through it yourself, if you discover it on your own. And I love and so he uses these metaphors and stuff. I love the metaphor where they're talking about, they actually have an argument. There's an actual debate where they're talking about things that you can and can't control. And they're talking about like a peach, you know, like the peach tree that they're standing under. And Oogway is saying that you can't control how fast the tree grows, and you can't, and Shifu is like, no, but I can control. He like punches the tree and all the peaches fall down. And then he says, I can control when the fruit falls. And then he grabs the peach and he slices it in half. And then he grabs the seed and he plants it, and he can say, and I can control where the seed is planted. And Oogway says, like, yeah, but you can't, it's always going to be a peach tree. And like, there's always, it's like such a great, I don't know, such a great metaphor for, they're basically talking about like, what can you control and what can't you? And Shifu is saying like, he's trying to grab onto the things that he feels like he can control. He wants to have some kind of control to ensure things, which is understandable given that, you know, his like adopted son, who he like loved with all of his heart, betrayed him and like attacked him. So like, yeah, he probably does kind of, it would probably create a person, that experience would probably turn him into someone who is maybe not like a control freak, but wants to steward things in a positive way. He wants the safe option. He wants it to give it to Tigress, who he knows he can trust, essentially. He's scared, right? Like, he's scared that something's going to happen like that again. And Oogway's basically saying, like, no, you have to let things just kind of happen. You have to let there's just unavoidable things that you can't control. There's a nature to things that you can't control. And if you try to control, it's a waste of your time and energy. You kind of have to go with the flow a little bit. And then I love the scene after that, after, you know, Oogway dies. He basically, you know, he ascends essentially to the spirit realm and turns into like like petals, like flower petals. Just a beautiful visual. And then there's that scene of Po and Shifu almost immediately afterwards, I think. And they're having that argument. And Po's like, how are you going to turn me into the Dragon Warrior? And he doesn't believe him. And Shifu's like, I don't know. And it's great. It's like the first time Shifu is like, I don't, he admits that he's not right. And he has this moment of actual vulnerability and admitting that it's like he's starting to internalize Oogway's message, right? He's had just a moment to think on it, but he's starting to internalize it. And he's actually acknowledging that he can't absolutely control the process of making Po into this idea, right? Of the Dragon Warrior. And ultimately, it turns out that no, Shifu couldn't. It was inside of Po the whole time. It was just who he was. And it's really nice. It's an actual, like, it's on the, it's such a dumb movie going into it, but it actually has these really solid themes and really good character work that makes it really memorable. And it's something that I think, you know, like, it's one of those great scenarios where as a kid I could enjoy it because, you know, the comedy and the Jack Black, and it's at least like all that thematic stuff is it's at least presented in a way that a kid can understand. But as an adult, I can kind of look at it again from like a writing and a storytelling perspective, and I can appreciate it a lot more. And it was a real treat to rewatch, actually. I really enjoyed it. That is still a really good movie.